everybody, and welcome to our expanded edition of Ask the Superintendent. I'm Dr. Rachel Monadis, your proud superintendent of the Worcester Public Schools, and for the first time, we are broadcasting Ask the Superintendent both as a video and as a podcast. Super excited about this and the potential to reach even more people in this great community. My guest today is the nobody else knows but Brian Allen, Deputy Superintendent, Chief Financial Officer, and Chief Operations Officer, because he needs that many hats. And Mr. Allen is here to talk about the budget process for the next school year. So welcome, Mr. Allen.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We're happy to have you here. And so part of our new format for Ask the Superintendent, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and then you get to ask me 3 questions, okay? And we figure if we keep doing it that way, we keep the podcast to about 15 to 20 minutes, long enough to go in depth on a few things, but not so long that people decide to tune out. So how does that sound?
Sounds great to me.
So with that, let's start with our first question. All right, so you've got 3 decades in the district, Worcester Public Schools. What's your proudest achievement?
Given it's been 30 years, it's really been 3 different things. First is the Student Opportunity Act. Worcester was really a leader in passing the tremendous overhaul to the funding for the Worcester Public Schools. We're getting $100 million more over a 6-year period. That's a 20% increase in our budget that will be spent directly on classrooms, facilities, school safety, and support positions. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the bringing transportation in-house. That was a huge undertaking back in 2022 when you first came. That took many years of planning, but we got to a place where we're fully staffed. We have all brand new buses. We've seen a 76% reduction in parent complaints and a 98% on-time arrival success. So we're really proud of the success we've made. More work to do, but clearly a successful start to that. And then the third is, as you mentioned, the award-winning budget. That's a team effort. And what that means is we've met the highest national criteria for budget preparation and transparency. That really builds trust with our stakeholders, the school committee, city council. It's a very transparent budget. All the information is there. And so we've met that highest level through the Association of School Business Officials. So that was a very hard undertaking, but very worth the time and effort to achieve that level.
And I appreciate the budget book and everything that's in there. And then again, the additional pieces to show that this is about schools and children. Every year you have a different cover that is designed by children. I love that little bit of information also, and just the different pieces you have added in there. And I just really want to commend the transportation. That's a really big deal. That's when, again, before I came, I did some research on this bringing transportation in-house, because nationally we were having trouble just finding drivers, and transportation was such a challenge. So to know that I potentially was going to be the superintendent in a district that was bringing it in, I had to make sure, well, did they do what they need to do? And I was just so highly impressed with it. That's when I knew this side of the house, they're solid and they've got a really good leader. So thanks for that leadership, very much appreciated. And for getting our children safe to school each and every day and returning home. Their parents appreciate that too. All right, so let's talk about the budget for this next school year, what we refer to as school year 2026-27. It will be 26-27. No, it's budget 26 for the 25-26 school year. Yep. Jumped ahead for myself. So we have to acknowledge that this year it was challenging because last year we had to cut how much?
$22 million and 330 positions.
$22 million, 330 people that were not with us this school year, or maybe they were in a different capacity. That was not easy. And so the implementation on that, of course, doesn't fall in the business world, but we were so thoughtful, and you were so thoughtful about how to go about doing this, and really making sure that people had the information they needed and that we got as much feedback as possible given a difficult challenge. We've got some good news this year, right? On the horizon for fiscal 2026. Can you give an overview of the financial health of the district? What are the highlights? And then what are some realities that we should make sure our viewers and listeners have?
Sure. So no cuts this year, so we don't have to go through the same process we went through last year. We actually have seen a pretty moderate modest growth in student enrollment. We're up 428 students from last year. Good inflation compared to last year in the fifth year phase in of that Student Opportunity Act that I had just mentioned. So saying all of that, our budget's going up $38 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but our inflation is also going up. So trying to keep up with inflation for health insurance and salaries and all the other things that it takes to run the school district. So what does that mean? As I said, no reduction in staff. We'll actually be adding some teaching positions to reflect the increase in enrollment. But it doesn't leave a lot more to do the nice to do things. And so we'll have a much better budget year than we did last year, and we can start building towards a better tomorrow.
So we're not going to have to cut any, specials or anything like that. We'll be able to still have middle school and high school athletics. All that will remain.
All of that will remain next year.
We just don't have a whole bunch more to play with.
Correct.
Okay, well, at least we're not cutting. So that is good news. That's good news for the horizon. All right, so here's one more, because you're not busy enough. I asked you to do something new this year. I asked you to really think about creating an equity budgeting model. And I charged you with coming up with that. I didn't give you a lot of direction. I just said, I know we need to do this. All of our schools are not the same. We have a very diverse population with different needs. And Brian, bring me back a model. And I appreciate how you spent time researching that and looking at best practices before you came back with something. That shows, to me, lifelong learning, right? And you didn't say, I'm not doing that, Rachel. We've been winning these awards. Why do we need to make changes? You saw the need as well. So can you explain to our listeners, what does equity budgeting mean?
So this was actually really exciting to dive into, and something I've been looking forward to doing for many years. As you said in the introduction, teaching my Worcester State class, I've always said to the class participants, how do you link student achievement to resource allocation? And right, in thinking about Worcester, we are different across the entire city. So how do we link resources, that's people, money, and time, to really affect student achievement in a meaningful way? And so research is very clear. There are opportunity gaps for students that we need to close, and that student achievement is directly tied to those opportunity gaps. So if we can close those gaps, we can have a positive impact on student achievement. So that's the exciting part of this, is really linking those resources to help schools, maybe in a different way for each school, but what's going to be a targeted strategy that will be successful for them. So that was really exciting to start that process, to do the research, and then to have principals and their instructional leadership teams kind of give us their input on what that would look like in their individual school. So that's been exciting. So we'll see what we have for resources next year to actually put that in place. Yeah. But if not, I'm very optimistic that for the following school year, when we still have some Student Opportunity Act funds, we can make a real good investment in this equity-based budgeting.
Me too. It's kind of like exciting to have the model, and then when we saw not as much money, extra money as we thought, a little wah-wah, but we have it and we went through a process and we'll just get better. So I'm happy that you see the benefit too. So now you get to flip the switch, or the script, flip the script, and ask me some questions.
I don't get to do this that often, so
I
I'm
know.
looking forward to these three questions.
I see the glee in your eyes.
So if you had a magic wand, what would be the ideal state when it comes to the budget for the Worcester Public Schools? Within reason.
Oh, within reason.
Because we know superintendents like to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I like the magic wand, like everything. So, and I do remember you told me at the beginning, you come up with the vision, I'll figure out how to fund it. I remember that. I have not forgotten that. So honestly, I think in Worcester we do the best that we can given the constraints, if you will, the bucket of money that we receive. What I would love to see, and so this would be my magic wand, is less about what Worcester does and more about our state really looking to thinking about equity budgeting at the state level. I do believe that the SOA is an attempt to do that, and but there are some limitations, so they need to do a little bit of their own after action, talking with us to see what's working and how might we improve this. Because for example, let's say that the state says, right, because first let me say the state does a lot of grants. Well, grants aren't sustainable. And many times the grants are a one-year grant, which makes it even more challenging because you can't even build people's capacity, you could barely create a system, and the money's gone. The grants don't tend to be, from what I've seen, on a per pupil. They tend to be a pot of money, and so a district as big as Worcester might get the same amount of money as a district that has 5,000 children. So we can't really make much of an impact on that. So I would love to see the state say things like, you know what, we want to see early literacy increase across the Commonwealth, and we're going to give X amount of a per pupil allocation for the district to be able to make that happen, and it's going to be a 3-year. So you've got 3 years of X amount of money that you know, based off of your demographic, your actual number of students, to then make a difference. That would be a huge, I think, win across the board. And so if I could wave my magic wand, that's what I would do. And then we can determine, based off of our data, what our kids need.
No, that makes sense. That better use of resources, right?
I think so.
Okay, my second question. We have about 5,000 employees in the district, and 1,000 of them work in finance and operations, and the cameras are rolling. So how do you've touched upon this just a little earlier, but how do you see the operations side of the district, departments like finance, transportation, facilities, resulting in better student outcomes in teaching and learning?
I did touch on it a little bit because, you know, when you think about school, what does a family think about? The teacher and the principal. That's kind of it. It's the teacher, the principal, and there's so much more to educating a child. I see the business side of the house as the infrastructure. They create the walls, the base, the plumbing necessary for that schoolhouse to run effectively. And the tighter that they are running, and the more that they are clear on their purpose, that it's not about numbers, although the numbers are important, but the numbers represent a child and how that money impacts that child in that seat. That's when the district really has that synergy that's so important. You can't have a well-run district that only focuses on teaching and learning. You don't have, there's no infrastructure. It's like a blob. It's a blob. You need the infrastructure.
Need safe and well-maintained buildings, got to get students to school on time, feed them as they're hungry, and provide a nutritious meal. So thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And my final question is, you're finishing your 3rd year as superintendent in Worcester. What is your proudest achievement in the district's budget so far?
Whew. That's a good question. So it's the proudest achievement. The proudest achievement is the model of the equity model. We can't implement it as much as I want to, right? But I'm really proud that we have that, as it complements the excellence, what do we call it? The budgeting for excellence. Yeah, so we for those who don't know, the end of my 1st year, we said, what must every school have to be, to meet the necessary outcomes for the children? And we created that. So we created a standard class size. We created, every school should have a wraparound coordinator, so we've got someone to communicate with families. We created ratios for counseling, and it's not perfect, but at least it's got us something that then we can improve upon every so often. So that, as it complements the equity budgeting, I think that puts us above and beyond a lot of other districts.
I think we're in a good shape finishing this 3rd year. So I look forward to the future equity-based budgeting. So
I do too. So thank you for logging in and sticking with us in our first expanded Ask the Superintendent. I want to thank you, Mr. Allen, for sharing your wisdom and your brilliance with us, and for the decades of service
thank you.
In Worcester Public Schools. Be on the lookout and the listening for the next episode.